There is so much content in Final Fantasy XIV, from raids, dungeons, fishing, fashion, anything you can imagine, even housing. But what content is the most unique? Today, I want to answer that exact question. A lot of people might disagree with what I will talk about in this video, however, I hope I can give you enough arguments to at least understand my perspective. And hey, maybe I can change your mind. And as well, later in the video, I will be interviewing a couple of long-term community members as well, so stay tuned for that. Now, this will most likely be my last 14 video as I'm moving away from the game, but still, I was really passionate about this, so I really wanted to talk about it. Alright, let's get into it. So as you saw from the thumbnail, yes, I want to talk about the Baldesion Arsenal and Eureka, of course, as they're pretty much tied together. Now, what are my criteria for saying it is the most unique content? Well, first of all, it's the number of new systems introduced, their impact, and the way they interact with each other, and also the overall impact this content had on the entire Final Fantasy XIV community. This is something I have never heard anyone talk about, and I will go as far as to say it even helped to shape the way modern Final Fantasy communities work. I know that this is a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. I will explain everything. But then again, why am I qualified to talk about this? My friend and I had one of the largest discords dedicated to organizing runs for the Baldesion Arsenal, called Citadel of Light, for about 3 years, and we also saw how everything slowly evolved. However, the Discord is no longer operational, as we both pretty much stopped playing and we didn't have the energy to deal with the management and just keeping things running pretty much. And of course, also deal with whatever drama would happen that week. All that is exhausting, especially when you don't even log into the game. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. The first out of the 4 zones of Eureka was released on March of 2018 with a 4.25 patch. And usually a new zone would release every couple of months, every few months. Every zone was also instanced individually. That was during Stormblood, the best expansion ever. Don't even at me, you know I'm right. Okay, maybe Heavensward, but still. And when you reach the final zone, Hydatos, and level up to 60, you had the ability to unlock and enter the Baldesion Arsenal. Oh, and did I mention? Eureka uses its own leveling system that is separate from your character. So basically, you need to be level 70 to unlock Eureka, but once you get in, you start from elemental level 1. Then, you can go up to 60. The more you level up, the stronger you get, and you unlock different things and new zones. One of Eureka's core systems is the elemental system. There are 6 elements in total: lightning, fire, earth, ice, water, and wind. All the mobs in the area have an element. These elements interact with each other. For example, if you set yourself to be fire element, you will deal more damage to mobs with the water element. And if you set your element to be water, then you will have defense against their attacks. In the Eureka zones, there are events happening. That could be a small fate or a big boss fate like Pazuzu or Crystal Dude. These big boss fates drop items you will need for upgrades pretty much. These bosses were really not as easy, especially in the start, and it was very possible for wipes to happen. Now inside Eureka, you could even do your relic weapon if you followed a quest line. As you can see, there was a lot of things to do there, and even more that I haven't even mentioned yet. However, now that the introduction for Eureka has been done, let's move over to the Baldesion Arsenal. So I mentioned before you could only access the Baldesion Arsenal if you were elemental level 60 and have reached the zone of Hydatos, and also have done the quest to unlock it, but yeah. But what is the Baldesion Arsenal? It's a 56-man raid that in total it takes around 1 to 2 hours to fully complete nowadays. It can be done with less people, but of course it progressively gets harder. Now let's take a peek into the raid. How do you even get in there? Well, the queuing process is also a very unique experience and sometimes could be painful. When the instance has a certain amount of people, a big boss fate will spawn called Ovni. This part is very crucial, so pay attention. You need to kill the boss, then only if you get a gold medal on the fate, meaning you contributed enough, which is pretty easy to do, you will get a buff. We call it the portal buff, and shortly after, blue portals will spawn everywhere on the map. Anyone who has the buff can take a portal and will be teleported into the arsenal. The portals spawn in relatively fixed locations, so we had this map, and this is the way we split the entire raid, so everyone gets their own portal. But wait, you thought it was that easy? No. If you go into the portal when it's blue, a random portal from anywhere in the map will disappear, so that really conflicts with assigning positions to everyone. However, the portal becomes red after a few minutes. If you take it then, there's no problem at all. So yeah, pugging this without any coordination is hell, and we haven't even gotten to the worst part yet. So if you manage to do all that, congratulations, now you can get in. Once we are in, there's a couple of stuff to be done, like sorting out your logo's actions. What are logo's actions, you ask? Well, let's begin. They are basically buffs which you need some of them to ensure a clear on this raid. They're pretty much special actions only found in Eureka. And now it's time to start the action. Let's look at the layout of this raid. Right as we start, we need to split the raid in two. One group left, one group right. And then there's a few mobs, and then a boss on each side. The mobs have mechanics of their own, and they're not just, simple mobs. And they can even, wipe half the party if not dealt with properly. But it's fine, you can raise everyone, right? Wrong. You cannot raise inside the Baldesion Arsenal, but there is an alternative called Sacrifice L, in the form of a logos action pretty much. You can guess from the name that it doesn't just res, it sacrifices the person that uses it to save someone else. Ain't that convenient? So to combat this, we pair a sacrifice with another action called Spirit of the Remembered, which has 70% chance to automatically raise you when you die. So technically, if you're really unlucky, you just stay on the floor and become one with the floor. Yep, an absolute clusterfuck so far. But guess what? It's not over. There's more. Going back to the layout of the raid, once you are past the bosses that have relatively easy mechanics, but lethal nonetheless, you reach a big room, where the two separated groups meet again. In this big room, there are mobs. A lot of them, with mechanics being relatively dangerous too. Not too hard, just if they do fail, there will be consequences. After the mobs are dealt with, you arrive on another boss called Raiden. Not this Raiden. And he is a bit more tricky than the first two bosses. Still, the mechanics are pretty alright, however pretty much all of them now are lethal. When you defeat this boy right here, there's a load of new stuff coming for you, like the elemental rooms. It is exactly what it sounds like. There are 6 rooms. Each of them has mobs of a certain element. For example, one room could be filled with fire mobs, and the other one will be filled with water mobs. We need to defeat them to find the portal in one of the rooms. Then take the portal, which will take us on a similar corridor. Now this follows the same pattern. They're elemental rooms again. However, the mobs don't instantly spawn, and to spawn them, you have to step on a platform on each room. Also see these orange circle thingies? They're traps. You step on them, you pretty much die, and you might take some people with you as well. They're all over the arsenal. You need to assign people called trappers to discover them, because guess what? They are invisible. Anyway, the moment every platform is activated, the mobs will spawn in each room, and a fate will spawn outside the arsenal, in the hideous area. This fate is extremely crucial. Remember how I said it's a 56 player raid, but only 6 groups are in? Exactly. The 7th group is waiting outside for the fate to ensure it's completed. Why do we care about the stupid fate so much? Well, you have to complete the fate because it weakens the next boss in the arsenal and allows us to defeat it. And no, it's not weakened in the sense that it's just easier to defeat. It's simply impossible to do it without the fate. You don't understand. The boss will start casting benediction, healing itself, and also cast immunity, and will pump out insane attacks until we are all dead. That is insanity and is something never seen before in the history of the game. So yeah, that fate is pretty important. But regardless, if everything goes well, the fate will spawn portals for the group outside to get in. Then you can proceed to the weakened boss and defeat it. Once you're done with the weakened boss, you will be greeted with a couple of mobs. And then you will reach the final boss. This is arguably the hardest boss in here. And as well, look at the platform you have to work with. Yep, pretty tight. And also this kind of platform is extremely unique in terms of design for Final Fantasy XIV. And the worst thing about this fight is that the boss Ozma does a move called Black Hole, which sucks you out of the arsenal if not dealt with properly. And it basically it sucks you out and it just throws you back into Eureka. And that means if you die halfway into the fight or so, you still won't get the clear because you will be sucked out. That's pretty brutal, but I love it. I absolutely love it, and that is the Baldesion Arsenal in a nutshell. I absolutely really think it's a very fun piece of content. And of course, yeah, I know it's not perfect, but in my opinion, I had an incredible time doing it. No other content in the game, in my opinion, has managed to have as many systems work together in such a unique way. I really doubt something like this will ever happen again, since Square Enix has really stopped taking any kind of risks anymore with content creation, and everything slowly starts to feel the same. And since they're always going for the safe approach, the game feels pretty boring right now. This is one of the reasons, and a very big reason, why I kinda stopped playing the game. Regardless, let's look into the impact Eureka and BA had on the development and growth of the community. Before 2018, when Eureka was released, there were not a lot of communities outside the game, like the Discord communities for example we have nowadays. Not to say there were none, but the ones that were around were usually of very small size. The players themselves, at least the average player, mostly kept to themselves in their FC. So how did things take a turn, and how did BA and Eureka play a role in this? BA and Eureka required a lot of coordination and a lot of party forming to do the content. And also, there existed a few more complex systems like the Logos actions. And as well, Eureka could be very confusing to new people. For that reason, a lot of Discord communities started forming. One of the first one was Eureka Explorers, which was mostly information about Eureka, party forming, and discussions. Later on, followed BA-focused Discords, which was purely to organize runs for the Arsenal. This was the first time in the history of the game the community was forced to come and work together to do the content. There was almost no option to pug it. The only people that managed to do it was the Japanese. For EU and NA, pugging was almost impossible. I can safely say one of the reasons behind this, of course, difference of mentality. Also, I can only speak for EU, but we have a ton of different languages, cultures, time zones, and all that. And I see why pugging it on EU was very challenging. Now on NA, I can't speak as much, but of course the nature of the content itself makes it very hard already. These communities started becoming very large, with thousands and even tens of thousands members each. At around this time, a lot of non-BA communities were being created, like Final Fantasy XIV Europe, which is largely a community with no specific purpose, and also more spicy communities like Lovebringers, for example, Cursed. And a lot of the already existing communities started getting a lot of traction. Of course, I won't only put BA responsible for this, as Discord itself was becoming more and more popular, and also the internet culture was changing. And now it is time for some drama. There wouldn't be big communities without any drama. There was a lot of prestige, bragging rights, and power to be gained from being on top like everything else in life. And Final Fantasy XIV was no exception. I witnessed so many relationships burned, backstabbings, and everything you can imagine. At around 2018 to 19, it was the wild, wild west. Discord wars, insults, griefing, everything. Remember how I mentioned the portals earlier? That was a lot of portal sniping as well, and lots of griefing inside the Arsenal. Also conflicting time slots between Discords, and also Discord rivalry. It was truly a crazy time, and I loved it. It was always so weird and hypocritical to see players putting their 14 community on such a high pedestal when all these things were happening. In reality, it's like any other place. We are no different and no saints here. But let's hear more about it from our interviews here. Big thanks to Simi Sunshine and Angel Lux for giving me both of their interviews. Let's roll it. Hello, thank you for coming. Thank you very much for the interview.
No worries.
Alright, so first question. How did you just find the whole environment about Eureka? Not BA for now, just Eureka.
Eureka for Final Fantasy XIV was a very unique experience. Not so unique if you look at older games, and since I am older, I've played a lot of more open world grindy stuff. But for 14, it was something completely different. And I think in Animals, a lot of people gelled with it. But later down in Pago, since delays and such made Animals more nerfed on release, it wasn't really what the community wanted / expected.
Right.
And like everyone who did Pagos on release, they know how bad it was. But I think like for me, I had a pretty solid, good experience all through Eureka, except for, you know, the beginning stage of Pagos. I actually really enjoyed the open world aspects, the spawning of fates, and just killing mobs, which is something we, outside of kill quests, never really have to do.
Yes,
Unfortunately.
yes. The mobs in the outside world are like pointless and very meaningless.
Yes.
Why would you go out and kill them? There's no point.
No, like even the amount of actually hostile mobs back in ARR, at least from what I remember, were like maybe 1 or 2 groups per zone. Most of them were harmless and didn't even want to attack you. Except for where you hit the Garlemald stuff up in northern Tanaland and stuff like that, because all the Garleons were.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. So then, with all that experience, why did you decide to start your own Discord? Like, what happened?
So what happened was I did 3 clears on the big Discord that was there back then. And I really enjoyed the content, but I didn't really like how it was being done by that group.
Right. Okay.
So I was in Eureka one late night, and there was a shout from a guy who basically said, I've started a BA Discord that's going to be focused on late nights runs. And it's just clicked with me, like, yeah, like, that would work for me. My day cycle is completely screwed. So doing stuff at night wouldn't be out of the impossibility for me. So for some reason, I just decided that, yeah, I'll join that Discord and see what's up. And, over time, things just happened and grew there. Me being the main driving force to actually get stuff up and happening. And then after a while, we became decently big up until the server split, where we decided to go our separate ways and make our own Discord, since the other guys that had on that Discord was going to Chaos and I was staying on Light.
Right. I see. Okay. And since you started your own kind of place at that point, what were like some of the challenges you faced with running a Discord and then organizing the runs, of course?
I think the major challenge in the early days, both on the first Discord and the second Discord, was advertising and getting people in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what you do when it comes to 14. I think I went both to the Lodestone, made what are they called? Like some blog posts there. I went to the official forums. I went to Reddit. That thread got deleted.
Yeah.
Because Reddit is Reddit. But I think the most best thing we did back then to actually get people in was having a PF up as much as possible with the Discord link, and also going into the Eureka zones a couple of times a day and just shouting about the Discord.
Right, okay.
So the biggest hurdle in the beginning was getting a big of enough player base to consistently fill up the runs. And when we get to that stage, you start building up onto the next stage, which is getting multiple runs a day going.
Yeah, of course.
And still having both the community and the infrastructure behind that with party leaders and everything that needed to be organized.
Right, yeah.
Speaking of organization in the early days, there really wasn't that much to it. It was like, we need these 7 party leaders, and they need to throw up PFs. That was basically about it. As long as we had one raid leader that could take care of the first 2 bosses, because the group splits there. After that, it was fine, and I did most of the main raid leading for a long time there until we got other people up to the point where they wanted to raid lead.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So to summarize your question, getting people in there that will be active and actually want to do it, and then training up new raid leaders. That was always the hardest point, because it's hard to find a person that would fit the style we were going for, a little bit more laid back and a little bit more jokey. And also for getting those people actually to want to sit in front of 55 other people and be the raid leader. Like
that as well. It's a very hard task to do. Yeah.
There's anxiety, stage fright, like you name it.
Of course.
Like, it's not for everyone. It really isn't.
Okay, and then I remember as well a time where pretty much the runs, not only we would have multiple per day, they would also fill in seconds. In just seconds, and it was a wild time.
we had it set up so we put the PFs up 30 minutes before the run started, and then passwords went out.
Yeah.
And we had, as you said, sometimes we had all 7 PFs full in less than 10-15 seconds. It was ridiculous, and at that point it's like, do we start the run early or do we wait to go, because some people might have stuff they are doing here in this half hour?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
So those were the days, like 2-3 runs a day, and we filled them up in like a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You could
Fun
really
time.
feel like how much the community enjoyed this content.
Oh yeah. Everybody loved it back then for sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, how was the community back then? In like early days around 2018, I would say maybe until 19 or 2020.
So back in the early days, since this was the first piece of content that actually forced us to organize on a bigger scale than we ever done before, there was a lot of people who showed out of the woodworks with good intentions, and there were some people who showed up with less good intentions as well. But we definitely had a new level of drive in the community coming from people that wanted to do stuff. That it might have been there before, but never on that scale, because again, like, there was not really anything to organize that big around before.
That is actually true. BA was pretty much the only content that has ever done this, and the only content I think even now that has done this to this level.
Yeah.
The other question was pretty much, did you run the Discord solo or did you have a team with you?
Well, I started obviously solo, and then my friend instantly agreed to help me out and do the like shouts and stuff. But I started like building up a little team, and when we cleared, my idea was when we clear, we just delete the Discord server. But they didn't want that.
I see.
They were like, no, just let's keep it around and just see where it goes. But yeah, shortly after we had the data center split, so it didn't help. It's not there to this day. But
I see.
yeah, it's not used.
So that's pretty much it when you decided to kind of stop doing runs, pretty much, right?
Yeah, in my head, I always wanted to do one run. I didn't count in, like, that was my idea from the beginning. I had this idea that we all sign up and we all can make the time, a bit like a static, right? But so many people, right? So obviously there was like fluctuation with people not being there and other people coming in. So that we did say, I remember the day we cleared, some people who had been there a lot weren't there. So we did say immediately, yeah, we're going to do another clear or two, just to get the people in who already ran with us in the past and didn't make it for that day.
Right. I see what you mean.
Yeah, but other than that, it was never meant to be like, my idea wasn't to like host runs for the community like the Citadel of Light Discord did then.
I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and honestly, I understand that. It's a lot less stress to deal with, for sure. One question I was really curious of: how did you find the community as a whole back then? How did you feel BA impacted the whole community?
Like I said earlier, right? There were so many social activities. The people like. I felt it was a lot of fun. I met like so many new people, which I super liked. And Eureka added a lot of like, we worked together, like everyone, right? You cannot do it solo, or wasn't as efficient. And I think there was a really valuable addition from Square Enix to the game. I'm kind of sad.
I agree.
I'm kind of sad that with Basha, they made it more that you have to chase down all these critical engagements, so there is no room for this, like, social interaction anymore. I wish they would bring that back. I think that was a good thing about BA.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, obviously, there's toxicity as well, right? Everywhere you go.
Of course, in every social kind of setting, of course.
Drama involved, so as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, the normal thing.
I agreed. Yeah,
of
course, and especially
it was much more fun than like drama or toxicity ever.
Agreed. I so agree with you. that is pretty much the end of it. Big thanks again to both of them. This video took a lot of time to make, so if you would like to support me and support these kinds of videos as well, feel free to subscribe, like, all the usual stuff. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed and found this video helpful and informative. See you next time.